I have been filing incident reports for the 7th Ring Council for 41 cycles. In that time, I have documented border skirmishes, diplomatic collapses, the accidental detonation of a Vorin fuel depot, and the infamous Lekki Trade Summit where 3 ambassadors walked into the wrong docking bay and accidentally signed a treaty with a cargo hauler. None of those reports made me feel the way this one does. I want to be clear before you read any of the testimony below. I am a trained archivist. I deal in facts. I do not editorialize. I do not insert personal opinion into council documents. But I have read every word of what follows 3 times now, and each time I finish, I sit back in my chair, stare at the ceiling of my office, and think about what it means that a single human woman, one person, alone, standing in a room full of armed galactic enforcers, quietly said 2 words that stopped everything. 2 words. That belongs to me. And the room went silent, not the silence of confusion, the silence of something true being spoken in a place where truth had been buried for a very long time. What follows is the complete compiled testimony. I have arranged it chronologically, cross-referenced the accounts, and noted where they diverge and where, more significantly, they all say exactly the same thing. Read it carefully. I work the secondary docking ring at Vayreth. Have for 11 cycles now. It's not glamorous work. You check manifests, you verify clearance codes, you argue with freighter pilots about weight declarations. You watch a lot of ships come and go, and you mostly stop noticing them after a while. But I noticed the human. Not because she was loud. She wasn't. She came off the Terran shuttle in the middle of a full docking cycle, 17 vessels in the queue, cargo bays half open, the whole ring smelling of coolant and recycled atmosphere, and she walked through like she had an appointment with the station itself. Not nervous, not wide-eyed the way a lot of first-time visitors get when they see the size of Vayreth for the first time. Just purposeful. She had dark skin, close-cropped hair, and she was wearing Terran civilian travel clothes, nothing military, nothing official-looking. She carried one bag, regulation size, slung over one shoulder. She had a data slate in one hand and she was reading something on it as she walked, which is either very confident or very foolish depending on how you look at it, because our secondary docking ring is not a gentle place to walk while distracted. She didn't bump into anything. I ran her clearance. Dr. Mara Osai, Earth Designation, Cultural Antiquities and Archaeological Documentation Division, Terran Liaison Office. Visiting Credential, Level 2 Access, Academic Classification, valid for 40 standard hours. Nothing unusual. We get Terran researchers occasionally. Mostly they come to look at the Outer Reach star charts, or to access the Council's public historical records. They're quiet, thorough, and they always file their paperwork correctly, which I appreciate more than I can say. I logged her entry and went back to arguing with a Draveth freighter captain about his stated cargo weight. I didn't think about her again until the alarm. Testimony of Councillor Yeth Oron, 7th Ring Council, 3rd seat, primary witness. I want to state, before anything else, that I acted within the parameters of my authority as a council member. Every decision I made regarding the Vayreth cache, what the media have taken to calling the hidden relic, was made in accordance with established council protocol for sensitive archaeological material. I also want to state that I did not expect the human to know what it was. Nobody expected that. The Vayreth cache was discovered 14 months before the incident, during a routine deep structure scan of the station's lower maintenance levels. The original Vayreth construction predates the station by approximately 6,000 standard years. Whatever civilization built those lower chambers, and there is still significant scholarly disagreement about which civilization that was, they were not any of the 7 recognized founding species of the Unified Accord. What we found in that chamber was significant, an object, roughly cylindrical, approximately half a standard meter in length, composed of a material that our best analysts could not fully classify. Not metallic, not organic. It emitted a faint resonance that our instruments detected but could not categorize. It was clearly manufactured, clearly intentional, and it was covered, every centimeter of its surface, in markings. Not decorative markings, linguistic ones. Our xenolinguistic team spent 4 months attempting to decode those markings. They failed. We brought in outside experts, Voren, Lekai, 2 independent academic researchers from the Dravith Collective. All of them failed. We had an artifact of unknown origin, unknown function, unknown age, and unknown language. Standard Council protocol for such an object is containment and restricted access while study continues. The object was moved to a secure storage level on Veyrath Station, and the discovery was classified at level 5, meaning it was known to senior council members and designated research staff only. The reason we didn't announce it publicly was simple. We didn't want the artifact tourism. We've dealt with that before. An unclassified anomaly becomes a news event, and within 2 cycles you have 100 curiosity seekers and fringe theorists and amateur archaeologists trying to access the station, and the serious research gets buried under the noise. That was the only reason for the classification. I want to be clear about that. The human had no scheduled access to the secure level. She had level 2 clearance. The secure storage level requires level 7 clearance minimum, council approved with biometric verification. I still do not fully understand how she got there. Testimony of Station Security Officer Preth Vaughn, Veyrath Station, primary witness. She didn't break in. I need to say that right away, because the early reports made it sound like she'd bypassed our security systems or hacked something, and that's not what happened. What happened is that she asked. She walked up to the level 7 access checkpoint, which is a sealed corridor on sub-level 4, guarded by 2 enforcers and a full biometric lock, and she spoke to the enforcer on duty. I wasn't there for this part, but Enforcer Thak was, and he filed his own account. She walked up to the checkpoint, and she said, calmly and politely, that she believed there was an artifact in secure storage that she needed to examine. Thak told her she didn't have clearance. She said she understood that, and she was requesting an exception on the grounds that she had specific professional expertise relevant to the artifact in question. Thak told her exceptions required council authorization. She said she would wait while he contacted the relevant council member for authorization. Thak, and I'm not criticizing him here, because this is technically correct procedure, told her that wasn't possible, as the existence of materials in secure storage was classified. She paused at that. Thak said she tilted her head slightly, the way humans do when they're thinking something through. Then she said, very quietly, that she understood, and that if he could simply relay to the relevant authority that Dr. Mara Osai from the Terran Cultural Antiquities Division was at the checkpoint and wished to discuss the Veyrath markings, she was confident that someone would come to speak with her. And then she sat down on the floor outside the checkpoint, cross-legged, and opened her data slate and started reading. Thak reported this to me. I reported it to Senior Security Command. Senior Security Command reported it to the Council Duty Officer. She sat there for 3 hours. Testimony of Senior Research Analyst Davar Hen, Council Xenolinguistics Division, primary witness. I was the one who decided to go talk to her. Look, I know how that sounds, but I'd been staring at those markings for months. We all had. We'd run every known linguistic matrix against them. We'd cross-reference them with every documented pre-accord script in our database, and that database contains records of 947 distinct writing systems. Nothing matched. When I heard there was a Terran specialist sitting outside the checkpoint asking to discuss the Veyrath markings, using that exact phrase, when the existence of the artifact was supposed to be classified, I thought one of two things was happening. Either someone had leaked the information, which was a serious problem we needed to investigate, or this person actually knew something. I went down to sub-level 4. She was exactly where Thack said she'd be, sitting on the floor, data slate in her lap. She looked up when I came around the corner and she smiled. Not a nervous smile, not a trying to impress someone smile, just a normal, tired traveler smile. The kind you give someone when you're relieved you don't have to sit on the floor anymore. She stood up and introduced herself. Dr. Mara Osai, she said. She shook my hand with both of hers, which I later learned is a Terran gesture of particular respect. I introduced myself. I didn't tell her why I was there specifically. I said I'd heard she was asking to see some materials in restricted storage. She said yes. She said she'd seen a partial image of the artifact. She didn't say where, and I didn't press her at that point. And she believed the markings on its surface were a variant form of a writing system she'd been studying for 6 years. I asked her which writing system. She said something I still think about every day. She said the one humans used to use. Internal Council communication, classified transmission. The Terran researcher is claiming knowledge of the script. I've spoken with Davar Hen. Hen believes the claim has merit and is requesting I authorize temporary access for evaluation purposes. I am not authorizing access. My reasons are as follows. First, the artifact is designated Level 5 classified. The classification exists for a reason. We cannot simply open secure storage to any researcher who turns up and claims expertise. Second, and I want to be direct about this in writing, if the Terran researcher's claim is accurate, the implications for the artifact's origin are significant and potentially destabilizing. The artifact predates all recorded Terran civilization by thousands of years. If there is any connection, any suggestion of connection, between the artifact's script and Terran linguistic history, we are in entirely new diplomatic territory. That is not a conversation I want to have without full council deliberation. Third, I have serious concerns about the precedent. If we grant access to classified materials based on unverified expertise claims, we weaken the integrity of our classification system entirely. I am denying the access request. The Terran researcher should be informed that her visit has been noted, her concerns have been logged, and she is welcome to submit a formal research application through standard council channels. She can wait like everyone else. Testimony of Senior Research Analyst Davar Hen continued. I had to be the one to tell her. I'm not going to pretend that felt good. She'd been sitting on that floor for 3 hours. She'd traveled, I found out later, for 11 days on connecting transport to reach Veyrath Station, because the direct Terran route was suspended for maintenance. 11 days. To follow up on a partial image she'd seen referenced in a secondary academic document. I delivered the counselor's message. I tried to be diplomatic about it. I said the access request had been reviewed and declined at this time, and that she was welcome to submit a formal application through. She held up one hand. Not rudely, very gently. And she said, I understand. That's all, no anger, no argument, just those 2 words. She picked up her bag, tucked her data slate under her arm, and started walking back toward the main access corridor. She'd made it about 8 steps when she stopped. She turned around slowly. And she looked at me, and I could see something in her face that I think I'd been hoping wouldn't be there. Not anger, not frustration. Something quieter than that, something that looked a lot like certainty. She said, the script on the 4th register, the lower band left side, there's a symbol that looks like 2 concentric circles with a vertical line through them. The council's linguists will have tried to read it as a word unit. It isn't. It's a date marker. It means the object was made during a specific celestial alignment. the kind that only occurs once every 11,000 standard years. She waited a moment, watching me. The last occurrence of that alignment, she said, was approximately 11,000 standard years ago, which means the artifact is older than you think it is. Then she walked away. I stood there in that corridor for probably 60 seconds. Then I went back to my office, and I pulled up every image we had of the artifact's lower register. She was right. The symbol she described was exactly where she said it would be. Okay, so they said no. That's fine. I've had no before. I've had no from the Vekhari Preservation Society, from the Subleka Historical Board, from the University of New Carthage when I proposed my dissertation topic, which, by the way, the same university now has framed on their departmental wall, so, no isn't forever. What I need to think about is what I know and what they don't understand yet. I know the script. That's not arrogance, that's 6 years of my life. 6 years of reconstructed fragments, partial texts, dead-end translation attempts, breakthrough moments at 3 a.m. That turned out to be wrong, and then very slowly, painstakingly, starting to see the shape of it. I found the first fragment on a routine excavation in what used to be northern Ghana, 12 meters down, in a geological stratum that our dating systems placed at, conservatively, 9,000 years before present. The fragment was roughly the size of my palm. It was made of a material we still haven't fully classified, and it had 6 characters on it. 6 characters that didn't match anything in any human writing database. I spent a year on those 6 characters. I almost gave up twice. My department head told me I was chasing a dead end. My partner at the time, let's not get into that, told me I was obsessed in a way that was becoming a problem. I found a second fragment in a completely different excavation. Different continent, same stratum depth, same material, same script. Then a third. Then, and this was the moment that changed everything, I found a text. Not a fragment. A text. 47 characters carved into a surface that had been deliberately buried, sealed, and preserved. 47 characters that I spent 8 months decoding, and when I finally cracked the phonetic structure and started building the grammar, I realized what I was looking at. I was looking at a language. A complete, structured, internally consistent language, with grammar and syntax, and what appeared to be a standardized writing system, left behind by people who lived on Earth 11,000 years before any civilization we have on record. I called it Proto-Terran, which my colleagues thought was presumptuous. I called it that because there are elements, phonetic resonances, structural patterns that echo in every major early human language family. It's like, you know how all rivers eventually trace back to the same watershed? This is the watershed. The Council has an artifact with this script on it. An artifact found in deep space, in a structure that predates the unified accord by 6,000 years. They think it's alien. It isn't. I need them to understand that. I need to touch that artifact. Not for me, I mean, yes, for me. Obviously, my whole career is sitting in a secure storage room on sublevel 4. But mostly because whoever made that artifact, whoever built that chamber, whoever left that object there 11,000 years ago, they need to be known. They need to be real. You don't bury the watershed. Tomorrow, I'm going to try again. Testimony of Station Security Officer Preth Vaughn continued. She came back the next morning. Not aggressive about it. She just showed up at the main access corridor for sublevel 4 at 700 station time and asked to speak with whoever was in charge of the level 5 materials. I happened to be on duty. I came out to meet her myself because at that point I was curious about her, honestly. Security officers develop a sense for people. And this one, she wasn't what I expected. Most people who push against classified access are either agitated or working an angle. Entitled researchers who think rules don't apply to them. journalists trying to get a story, the occasional corporate operative who's less subtle than they think. She was none of those. She was calm. She was direct. She'd clearly slept, eaten breakfast, and organized her thoughts. She had a data slate with a prepared presentation on it, an actual slide presentation, the kind you prepare for a formal briefing, not a desperate on-the-spot argument. She asked if I had 10 minutes. I had 10 minutes. She walked me through her research, the fragments on Earth, the dating analysis, the language reconstruction, the structural patterns that connected her Proto-Terran script to the markings on the Vayreth artifact. I'm not a linguist. I'm not a scientist. But I'm a 20-year security professional who has sat through a lot of briefings by a lot of people trying to convince me of a lot of things, and I know the difference between someone who's telling the truth and someone who's performing it. She was telling the truth. I told her I would pass her materials to the council duty officer and request a formal hearing. She thanked me. She sat down on the floor outside the checkpoint again. I went to make the call. The council denied the hearing request within 40 minutes. Testimony of Counselor Yeth Oron continued. I will be honest about this part. I will be honest, because the tribunal will have access to the communication logs regardless. I denied the hearing request not because her materials lacked merit. Davar Hen had already told me they had significant merit. I denied it because the implications of her being right were something I needed more time to process. If the artifact was of Terran origin, if humans had been in deep space 11,000 years ago, building structures and leaving objects with their own writing system on them, then the entire framework of Terran status in the Unified Accord would need to be revisited. Humans were admitted to the Accord as a young species, junior status, limited access, provisional membership. The entire diplomatic architecture of our relationship with Earth was built on the premise that humans were newcomers, that they were late. If they weren't late, if they were, in some sense, among the first, then everything changes. The Accord has 17 active clauses that govern the rights of early civilizations versus junior species. If humans qualify as the former instead of the latter, those clauses apply to them. Resource access, territorial recognition, council voting rights. I needed to consult with the full council before allowing any investigation that might produce evidence supporting that claim. I was not trying to suppress the truth. I was trying to manage the pace of its revelation. I understand now that there is a distinction between those two things, but that it is not as large a distinction as I believed at the time. I want to be precise about the sequence of events, because there's been some confusion in the secondary accounts about what happened and when. By 1400 hours on the second day, I had been denied access twice and a formal hearing once. The security officer, Officer Vaughn, who was genuinely decent throughout this whole thing, came out and told me about the hearing denial in person, which I appreciated. He didn't have to do that. I sat there for a while after he left. I want to be honest about how I felt in that moment because I think it matters. I wasn't angry. I've learned that anger in situations like this mostly just makes the other party defensive. What I felt was sad, maybe, not despairing. More like the specific sadness of watching something true be deliberately set aside and understanding why, but still wishing it weren't happening. I also felt something else. I felt certain. Not arrogant, certain. There's a difference. Arrogance is when you know you're right and you want the other person to feel it. Certainty is when you know you're right and it's just a fact you're carrying, like knowing your own name. You don't need to perform it. I had spent 6 years living inside this language. I had decoded 47 characters and reconstructed the grammar of a civilization that no one in the galaxy, including my own species, knew had existed. I had held fragments of it in my hands, in actual archaeological conditions, with my own instruments. I had built the translation matrix from scratch, cross-referenced it with 64 modern and ancient Terran languages, and found the echoes in every single one of them. I knew what the Veyrath artifact was. I knew what the script said. And I knew because I'd been working on the date marker for 3 months before I saw the image of the artifact. I knew that the object in that secure storage room had been placed there by someone who spoke a language that was the ancestor of every language my species had ever used. That object belonged to the human story, maybe not to me personally, but to us. I stood up. I picked up my bag. And I walked to the checkpoint. Testimony of Enforcer Thak, Veyrath Station Security Force, primary witness. I had already told her twice she didn't have clearance. I had the protocols. I had my post. I was not going to open a level 7 checkpoint for a level 2 visitor, regardless of what she said she knew. When she came back the third time, I told her again. Clearly. I told her she needed to return to the civilian levels or I would have to escort her. She looked at me, she looked at the door. She said, "Is Counselor Oron aware that if this object is of Terran origin, he is currently in violation of Article 7 of the Unified Accord's Archaeological Preservation Charter, which states that any artifact originating with a recognized Accord species must be made accessible to a designated representative of that species within 48 hours of their formal request for access?" I'll be honest, I didn't know the Article 7 provision. I'm a security enforcer, not a legal expert. She said, "I filed my first formal request approximately 26 hours ago. The 48-hour window expires in 22 hours. I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm trying to make sure this is resolved within the legal timeline so that no one here has a problem later." She said it like she was genuinely trying to help me. I told her to wait. I opened a channel to the Council Duty Office. Testimony of Counselor Yeth Oron continued. The Article 7 provision. I knew about it. Of course I knew about it. The issue was, as I said to our legal counsel when the comms came through from the checkpoint, the Article 7 provision applied only to artifacts confirmed as originating with a recognized Accord species. The Veyrath artifact had not been confirmed as anything. It was unclassified. Therefore, the provision technically didn't apply. Our legal counsel spent approximately 7 minutes explaining this to me. And then she said, "However, if the Terran researcher's claim is credible and she can demonstrate it, and we have denied her access during the window, then the moment confirmation occurs the denial becomes retroactive noncompliance, which is a different legal situation." I told her to find a way to hold the request off for another 24 hours, while I convened an emergency council session. She told me she'd try. That conversation was logged at 14:47 hours. The incident at the checkpoint occurred at 15:09 hours. 22 minutes. Testimony of Dr. Mara Osai continued. I was still standing at the checkpoint when more enforcers arrived. I want to be clear, I was not doing anything threatening. I was standing still, approximately 2 meters from Enforcer Thak, with my bag on my shoulder and my data slate in my hand. I was not blocking the checkpoint. I was not raising my voice. 4 additional enforcers came down the corridor. They positioned themselves, and this is the word I keep coming back to, they positioned themselves in a way that was designed to feel like a wall, not an escort, a wall. The lead enforcer told me that by order of the council, I was to be removed to the civilian levels and held in temporary administrative confinement pending review of my conduct. He was very official about it. Full formal syntax, rank identifications, procedural language, the works. I listened. When he finished, I said, "I understand. Before you execute that order, I'd like to make one request. I'd like you to relay a message to Counselor Oron." He told me I could file a message request through standard channels from administrative confinement. I said, I'd like you to tell him that Dr. Odyssey says the third line of the fourth register reads, "This object is held in trust until the children of the makers return." That's the translation. I'd like him to hear it before you take me anywhere. The lead enforcer looked at me. I'm not sure what he expected me to say. Probably an argument, probably a legal threat or an appeal to rights or something defiant. I didn't feel defiant. I just wanted him to hear the translation. He opened his comm unit. Testimony of enforcer lead care of DAS, Verath Station Security Force, primary witness. I've been on the force for 16 years. I've removed plenty of people from restricted areas. It's usually not complicated. People push, you push back. You document it, you move on. This one was complicated. When she gave me the message for the counselor, I should have just filed the comm request through channels and proceeded with the escort. That was procedure. But she'd been so calm about everything. Not agitated calm, not medicated calm. The kind of calm where someone knows something you don't, and they're not going to make a scene about it because they don't need to. I opened the comm unit and relayed the message. There was a long pause on the other end. Then the counselor's voice came back, and it was different from how it had sounded in previous check-ins. Quieter. Something had changed in it. He said, "What is the first word of the third line?" I asked her. She said, "Velith." Then she spelled it out in the standard phonetic notation, very carefully, the way you would if you needed someone to transcribe it correctly. Another pause. Then the counselor said, "Bring her to me." Not to administrative confinement. To him. Testimony of Counselor Yeth Oron continued. I know why that word stopped me. Velith. Our xenolinguistic team had isolated that word, that character string, as a repeating element in the Verath script. It appeared 7 times across the artifact's surface. They had attempted to translate it using 42 known linguistic matrices and got nothing. The word meant nothing in any language in our database. It meant nothing. But she knew it. She knew it because she had built the translation matrix herself, from scratch, from fragments on Earth. Because the language on the artifact was her language, her species' language, a language 11,000 years older than anything her people had been given credit for. Velith, I looked it up later in her submitted translation index. It means belonging. As in, this object belongs. As in, this thing has a rightful place and a rightful keeper, and that relationship is recognized and honored. I sat in my office for probably 2 full minutes after she relayed that word. And then I thought, we have hidden this from her. We have had this thing that belongs to her story, her history, her people's past, and we have locked it away and refused her access and prepared to confine her. And all she has done, the entire time, is sit quietly on the floor and wait and tell us what she knows. I told Enforcer Das to bring her to me. Testimony of Davar Hen continued. I was in the counselor's office when she was brought in. He'd called me there specifically, I think because he needed a witness who wasn't another council member, someone who would file an honest account. She came in with the enforcers. She looked around the office. It's a large office, the kind of space that's designed to make visitors feel small, and her eyes went to the artifact. The counselor had ordered it brought up from secure storage while we waited for her. It was on the desk in front of him in its containment field, a soft blue glow, 1/2 meter long, covered in those markings I'd been staring at for months. She stopped when she saw it. She just stopped. The enforcers nearly walked into her. She stared at it for a moment. Her expression was, I have been trying to find the right word since I filed my first preliminary account, and I still don't have it. It wasn't the expression of someone seeing a rare object. It was the expression of someone seeing something that confirms a thing they have spent years knowing without being able to prove. Like being told you were right. Like being allowed to be right. The counselor stood. He said, Dr. Osai, you have indicated that you can read the markings on this object. She tore her eyes away from the artifact and looked at him. And she said very quietly, that belongs to me. Not aggressively, not possessively in the grasping sense, more like a statement of record, a correction of something that had been filed incorrectly for too long. That belongs to me. Meaning my people, my history, my civilization story. The counselor was quiet for a moment, then he said, show me. They lowered the containment field. I don't know if they understood when they did it, how significant that was to me. I don't think there's a way to explain to someone who isn't human, maybe even to most humans, what it felt like to stand in front of that object without glass between us. I put on the handling gloves they gave me. I waited until their technician confirmed the object was safe to touch. And then I reached out and I put my hand on it. It was warm. I know that sounds like the kind of thing you add for dramatic effect. It isn't. The object was measurably warm, not hot, not dangerous, just warm the way a stone gets warm when it sits in sunlight, except there was no sunlight in that office. The object generated its own warmth, and when I touched it, I felt something. I don't have a scientific word for what I felt. A resonance, maybe. A recognition. I've touched a lot of archaeological fragments in my career. You never feel them like that. I started reading. The script runs in a spiral pattern, which our team had documented but not fully understood. They'd been trying to read it left to right, top to bottom, the way you'd approach most known writing systems. That's not how Proto-Terran works. It spirals inward clockwise, beginning at the outer edge and moving toward the center, like a conversation that starts at the beginning of time and ends at the moment of discovery. I started from the outer edge. I read it out loud. This object is made in the time of the Great Going. We are the people of the deep water and the high mountain, and the place where the sky touches the earth. We have learned to walk between stars. We leave this object as a record and a marker and a gift. We leave it in the place of the long sleep, the chamber of the builders, so that whoever comes will know that we were here and we were real. This object is held in trust until the children of the makers return. When they return, they will speak this language. If they cannot speak it, they will feel it. If they cannot feel it, they are not our children. But we believe in our children. We believe they will find us. We believe they will find us across the long dark. We believe they will come home. The object knows its keeper. Let it go home. Testimony of Davar Hen continued. She read it out loud, all the way through, in a language that no one else in that room could understand. A language that sounded, and I have been thinking about how to describe this, it sounded like something you recognized even though you'd never heard it. Something in the structure of it, the rhythm, like music in a key you've heard echoed in other music. When she finished, the room was very quiet. The counselor sat down. He didn't say anything for a long time. She still had her hand on the artifact. I asked her quietly, because it felt like the moment required quiet, what the last line meant. The one about the object knowing its keeper. She looked at me. She said, I think whoever made this built something into the material, something that responds. I don't know if it's technology or something else. But I think the warmth I felt when I touched it, I think that might be it. I looked at the surface of the artifact. The markings were glowing. They hadn't been glowing before she touched it. Not the containment field, the markings themselves. A faint, warm gold, very gentle, illuminating the spiral text from the outer edge to the center. The counselor stood up again. He stared at it. He said, "What does that mean?" She looked at the glowing text. She looked at him, and she said very simply, "I think it means I passed the test." Testimony of Counselor Yeth Oron continued. I don't have a scientific explanation for what happened when she touched the artifact. Our technicians are still analyzing it. The current hypothesis is that the object contains some form of biometric or genetic resonance technology, that it was built to respond to the biological signature of specific lineages, the way a key responds to a specific lock. If that's true, and it increasingly appears to be, then the makers of that object, 11,000 years ago, built something that would sleep dormant for 11,000 years, and then recognize a specific biological heritage when it finally arrived. They built something that would wait. They built something that believed their descendants would come. I think about that sometimes, in the middle of the night when I can't sleep. I have served on the council for 23 cycles. I have dealt with a lot of species, a lot of claims, a lot of competing historical narratives. I have learned to be careful about certainty. History is complicated. Evidence is partial. Truth is usually somewhere in the middle. But there is no middle here. She touched that object and it woke up. After 11,000 years, it woke up for her. Whatever the makers of that artifact believed about their descendants, whatever faith they had, to build something designed to wait 11,000 years for the right person to touch it, they were right. She came. She found it. She read it. I denied her access twice, and I was going to have her removed. I think about that part too, in the middle of the night. I heard about what happened from Preth Vaughn, over mess hall food about 3 hours after the incident. He told me the whole story, the sitting on the floor, the message, the artifact glowing. I sat with it for a while. Then I said, huh. And Vaughn said, yeah. And we sat with it a little longer. I thought about the woman I'd logged in through the secondary docking ring 2 days earlier, reading her data slate while she walked, not wide-eyed, purposeful. She'd known, I think, even then. She'd traveled 11 days to get here. She'd been denied access twice. She'd been threatened with administrative confinement. And throughout all of it, she'd known exactly what was in that room. I think the word I keep coming back to is patient. Humans are patient in a way that I don't think most species fully appreciate. It looks like quietness, and we mistake quiet for weak. But it isn't. It's something more like she had the truth, and she was willing to wait for as long as it took for the truth to be heard. 11,000 years, the artifact waited. 2 days she waited. Same principle. Official statement, Terran Liaison Office. The Terran Liaison Office acknowledges with deep respect and emotion the findings of the Veyrath incident. Dr. Mara Os has devoted 6 years of rigorous academic work to the recovery and reconstruction of what has now been officially designated Proto-Terran script, the earliest documented human writing system, predating all previously known human civilizations by a minimum of 8,000 years. The discovery of a Proto-Terran artifact in the outer reaches of Accord space fundamentally revises our understanding of human history and our species' place in the galactic community. We wish to thank, sincerely, Dr. Osai for her extraordinary patience, professionalism, and quiet determination throughout this process. We also wish to acknowledge Officer Preth Vaughn, Enforcer Lead Kerev Das, and Senior Analyst Davar Hen for their willingness to listen. We ask the Council to begin formal review of Terran status under Articles 3, 7, and 12 of the Unified Accord. We are not newcomers. We just forgot for a while how old we are. Testimony of Senior Research Analyst Davar Hen, final account. After everything was documented, after the Council deliberation began and the legal teams got involved, and the whole thing became what it became, I found a quiet moment to sit with Dr. Osai in the station's observation deck. She was looking at the stars. There's a particular section of the view from Veyrath where you can see the outer reach without any station structure in the way, just open space, stars thick as scattered salt. the kind of view that reminds you how large everything is. I asked her what she was thinking. She said, "I'm thinking about the people who made it, the ones who built the chamber and put the object there and wrote in it that they believed their children would come back." I said, "What about them?" She said, "They were right, weren't they? 11,000 years and they were right. That's an extraordinary thing to be, right." I asked her what she thought happened to them, where they went after they built the chamber and left the object. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "I think they came home. I think something happened and they had to come back to Earth and they lost the knowledge slowly, the way you lose things when you're surviving instead of thriving. Languages simplify. History compresses. The long past becomes legend, becomes myth, becomes nothing." She paused. "But they left the object. They made sure someone would find it. They built in the recognition key so their descendants would be known to it. They thought of everything except the 11,000 years in between." She smiled. It was a sad smile, the kind that carries a lot of weight. "But we found it anyway," she said. "A little late, but we found it." Personal log, Dr. Mara Os. Entry filed, 4 days post-incident. I have been asked by approximately 17 journalists, 4 council representatives, 2 members of the Terran Parliament, and my mother to describe how I felt in the moment when the artifact's markings started to glow. I keep trying to find the right word. Validated doesn't cover it. Vindicated is too combative, moved is too small. The closest I can get is this. Imagine you've been carrying a truth for a very long time. Not a comfortable truth, a truth that people told you was probably wrong, or at least unverifiable, or at least better left alone. A truth that cost you relationships and sleep and professional goodwill, and 11 days on badly scheduled connecting transports. Imagine carrying that truth into a room full of people who'd rather you weren't there. And then imagine the truth just proves itself. Not because you forced it, not because you argued it into existence, just because truth, left alone, has a way of eventually doing that. The artifact glowed. The language spoke. The 11,000 years closed, just a little. I don't think the word I'm looking for is in any language I know. Maybe it's in the Proto-Terran script somewhere, in a fragment I haven't found yet. Maybe that's a reason to keep digging. I have compiled this report from 7 primary testimonies and 3 secondary accounts. I have cross-referenced the events, confirmed the sequence, and documented the technical evidence, the artifact's response, the translation verification, the linguistic analysis subsequently completed by a joint team of Terran and Council researchers that fully corroborated Dr. Osai's Proto-Terran translation. I want to conclude with an observation that falls slightly outside standard archival practice. I offer it as an individual who has read this testimony 3 times and felt something shift in my understanding each time. We, the Council, the broader accord, every species that has sat in judgment of humanity's status and readiness and rights, we made a foundational error, not a malicious one in most cases. An error born of the most common kind of blindness. We saw a species that arrived late to our version of galactic civilization, and we assumed that meant they had always been late. We saw youth in front of us and missed the age beneath it. 11,000 years ago, someone traveled between stars. Someone reached the outer reach. Someone built a chamber and left a gift and wrote in it, in a language that would eventually echo through every tongue their descendants ever spoke, that they believed those descendants would return. That civilization is not lost anymore. One woman found it, not with force, not with political authority, not with access rights or council approval or any of the institutional machinery we spend so much of our time maintaining. She found it by knowing the language, by having studied it until it was part of her, by traveling 11 days on connecting transports and sitting on a floor and waiting, and by quietly, when the moment came, telling the truth. The object glowed. The children of the makers came home. I do not know what the full implications of this discovery will be for the Accord, for Terran status, for the diplomatic framework we have all operated within for the past 200 cycles. But I know what it means about the humans. They are not what we thought. And perhaps more uncomfortably, they never were.